In those instances, the changes and fluctuations in income is much more volatile than the actual portfolio and the security and the assets underlying it. Thank you, Sam.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
So my name is Alice Mak, and I own a law firm called Property Pal Australia, and we mainly specialize in property law. So anywhere from your vanilla residential conveyancing all the way to Supreme Court litigation.
Okay, great. Let's get into it. So, Alice, tell me, this is a question that I ask all of my clients. What does wealth mean to you?
Okay, so I guess wealth means different things to different people, but for me in particular, it's the luxury of choices. So being able to choose when I work, being able to choose when I spend time with my family, spend time with my friends, spend time on my hobbies. And it's that ability of choice gives me freedom and control over how I want to live my life. So that is really the meaning of wealth to me.
I always find it interesting when people answer that question. Because generally, when we say wealth, or people look at the wealth builders finance, oh, it's only for wealthy people. But actually, wealth generally just means security for people's families or getting more time back. What I like to do is property is a great tool to help you build that wealth to give you the life that you want. I think in reality, what people actually want is they want to just be able to look after the people that they care about most.
And how do you think the new budget 2026 to 27
Yes.
budget? Because obviously I'm looking at it and just thinking investment properties are one of the biggest tax deductions for PAYG income earners. And now there's massive changes there for native gearing and capital gains tax.
Yeah.
So I guess, have you thought about that a little?
I have a lot to say on the federal budget. We could be here forever. First of all, what I want to say is,
do you think it might be repealed?
yeah, to be honest, I can't believe that they didn't. The fact that they're given the transition period suggests that maybe they're trying to test the waters, and if it's so bad, they're just going to repeal it anyway.
Which has happened before.
The government does have the numbers really to get it through Parliament, but at the end of the day, it's about the devil in the detail, and when it actually goes to Royal Assent and it actually becomes law. Governments have tiptoed around this for decades. They haven't wanted to touch it. And the reason you don't want to touch it is because the reality is 70% of the population either owns a home outright or owns it with a mortgage. And that 70%, to be honest, most of the wealth of one individual is generally in property.
That's true.
And so what you're really doing is you're tinkering with a lot of hardworking Australians, mum and dads that just want to get ahead. And that's what it comes down to. But of course, the noise always gets dressed up as, oh, we're taxing the rich, we're taking it away from the rich. It couldn't be.
No, all the exemptions are in.
Yeah, well, that's
schemes.
what I mean. They're actually probably getting protected and everything that's coming out of. If we're going after property investors, well, the reality is like there's only 2% of property investors that have free property investments, and I guess you classify them as wealthy investors. But the majority of it is just mum and dad's hardworking Australians with one or two investment properties, just trying to get ahead and use that to create wealth and pay off their mortgage, and so they can have a better retirement.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like tinkering with is a really bad idea, and I think the government is about to learn who these investors actually are. And I'll tell you, they're not the wealthy investors like they like to kind of dress this policy up by you. So yeah, I hate to get political, but it's a very heated debate.
It's a very hot topic, and I guess very similar train of thought to you is that it's not law yet.
Yeah.
Don't look at the media. Go to the source document, budget.com.gov.au, and just read very carefully those summary documents. Because even last night, my husband was saying to me, oh, like everything will start from next year. I'm like, no. The trust one starts from July 2028.
I think that was actually the biggest surprise that came out it's just the 30% blanket tax on investments, like even shares and also on trusts, discretionary trusts and family trusts. I think that's actually a real big kicker, to be honest. I think I can see there's going to be a lot of double taxation that could potentially be consequences of that. The thing that is going to get a lot harder if people can't negative gear is the banks actually have in their servicing models built in negative gearing. You won't be able to borrow at 10, 20% as much as you used to. That's actually going to have a ripple effect right through the economy because people aren't going to be able to borrow. So I don't know actually how long it will last because I think it has a lot of unintended consequences.
I just feel like there is a probability that it may be repealed.
Yeah. The last time that a government tried to do this was the Keating government, and they basically repealed it, I think 12 months or 24 months straight after.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
I think it's the uncertainty that's the hardest thing as well, because people just really don't like uncertainty. It really does play with people's behavior, not knowing what they should do, especially when it's a change to a policy that no one has touched in decades, and then not knowing if that policy is actually going to stick. That's the hardest thing.
There's young people trying to get ahead, right?
Yeah.
And they basically, what they do is they buy a property with 3 bedrooms and they lease out the other 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, those negative gearing and capital gains tax affects me. And then there's clients that are trying to get their kids ahead by gifting the properties. Right? And then obviously then the kids can then use that as leverage to borrow and, invest in other properties.
The government should really be helping these kind of people because
Exactly.
to help people get on the ladder is that what parents are actually doing is they're gifting properties to their children. They really shouldn't be penalized for that.
Exactly. So I just have all these wild questions that are like not answered.
Yeah.
And like you said, unintended consequences because it doesn't cover the full spectrum.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I also got out of the budget is there's nothing actually mentioned about productivity in the budget at all. A lot of people will say it's already here. It's the AI revolution. We actually do need a bit of government help to help us transition to the AI revolution and how that affects and how we can get more productive by actually using AI rather than letting it take over.
Are you using AI right now?
I use AI a bit in the business as well. My view on AI has always been use it like you would use an assistant. And so don't let it control you, let it assist you. And I think that's the best way to look at it as well. What it'll do tasks for you, they'll take you a lot longer. And ultimately, what it will help a mortgage broker is to be able to have more conversations with more clients because a lot of service businesses, at the end of the day, we can only talk to so many people in one day.
Yeah.
We should make that as easy as it can be.
Yeah, 100% agree. Right now, how I use AI in my practice is more so for time efficiency. Like you said, I never use it for things I don't know the answer. So if I know what that right answer is, then I can be confident to say, collate this or summarize this for me and quicker.
It's good at articulating your words as well. So I prompt AI basically essentially writing an essay on what I want to say. So essentially that's the same as having an EA. You want to say something and then the EA will work out how you
say it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Say it nicer, say it longer, say it shorter.
Yeah.
Write this in a more professional manner.
How is AI affecting lawyers?
I think it definitely is having an impact on the entry level roles.
Yeah.
I guess similarly, it does help with a lot of time saving. Some of the software programs out there that are AI backed, like generative AI, they're actually very good for certain areas of law that has been developed. For example, litigation and collation of evidence and finding certain evidence, document discovery. I guess what my perspective is that the younger lawyers out there now should probably focus more on how to master the tool and to learn, because AI can't help you learn what the right content is. That you still need experience, you need a very solid foundation of case law and legislative interpretation. AI, if you run a document through it to say, can you review what the legal problem is, it can probably get it pretty well, like 60, 70%. But if a client comes asking, what do I do about the problems? And I can't help you with that.
Yeah.
It's really good at summarizing, collating documents, finding things.
Yeah.
But to actually know the law, and what's really, I keep on hammering this into younger lawyers, is understanding the commerciality
Yeah.
of certain situations. So a lawyer being able to see the full picture and to make recommendations based on that is not something that what AI can help at the moment.
Tell me, Alice, how does a lawyer get paid? And what do I need to understand about a lawyer's income?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, Sam, because there's a lot of different areas of law. So, take me for example, I have a specialist property law practice. So, take the fast end of the spectrum, residential conveyancing. The matter turnover is anywhere between 30 days to 60 days. Usually it's around 45 days. So, we get paid rapidly, at least once every month. Then you have your
Different.
litigation. We generally can't take more than 3 matters per person per year if they're really large Supreme
Wow.
Court litigations. So those matters, you might not get paid for 6 months, and then once it ends, it might just come straight away. Obviously, you can take money on trust and you get paid on a monthly basis. So we try to spread out the litigation income. But for those lawyers who work in litigation that don't have a trust account, for example, they might not get paid a couple of months at a time. So I guess from a lending perspective, you have to find lenders that have flexible policies to be able to account for that and projections based on either past income or future income.
So there's clearly a lot of ways you would look at that income, and it comes down to a lawyer's personal situation. From a lending perspective, is it's one of those industries that you really need to find the right lender that actually understands an individual's circumstances and how that income is actually coming about, especially if there's potentially not a lot of income on paper, but you can clearly see that the trajectory is that there's a lot more income coming, knowing what bank can and can't do that. If you have a good case and you have a good profile, a bank will certainly look at it.
I guess because life has its ups and downs, and you can be the best at your job, be very professional, but life always throws a spanner in the works. You started a company, it's going really well, you have massive income streams coming in, then you and your partner of the law firm then go separate ways. Similarly, you can be like the best worker or something, and then all of a sudden a tragedy or a marriage breakup or
Yeah.
something like that could hit. So in those circumstances, the different changes in income structure, frequency, and amounts, and how that impacts the overall portfolio
Yeah.
is quite important for, at least I think, for lawyers as well, who going from working for a law firm to starting your own business, and then the transition out, and then the growth. So you'll have, for example, you might be a partner at a top tier law firm earning $1 million, and then all of a sudden you come out, you'll be like maybe 100, 200K the first year. And then second year, you go back up to 700, 800K. And then you split, and then you go back down to 50K. So that sort of up and down. And obviously, in those instances, the changes and fluctuations in income is much more volatile than the actual portfolio and the security and the assets underlying it.
In your experience with managing or seeing what goes on when someone has a big jump into that sort of income, do you find that lawyers struggle to adjust their lifestyle, especially when it goes from one extreme to the next?
Yeah, I find lawyers quite enjoy certainty and structures. So, be it a huge increase in income or a huge decrease in income, we just like to live the way we are currently, which is a struggle sometimes, especially if it goes significantly below the previous income. But even, say, for example, if we have a huge increase in income, we would still be very conservative. At least I would be very wary of that and stash away as much money as possible and won't, say, upgrade things.
I think that's also a reason why a lot of lenders look at the profile of a lawyer and they know that basically if they earn $1 million next year, they're not going to go crazy and do reckless stuff.
So, say theoretically, if I said, okay, Sam, I'm looking at refinancing this investment property. If we came to you with a novel situation, how would you, what's the methodology that you assess lenders and adapted their different policies based on a new situation for you.
It's really what the client is ultimately looking for and the structure of the income. Sometimes a client may earn a lot of money, but they're just a PAYG client, so they just work for an employer. It is pretty straightforward. Then what it actually comes down to is, okay, is the size of loan? What lenders can we actually get the sharpest pricing from? But yeah, and then obviously when it comes to self-employed, the main thing that you're looking for self-employed is who works best with this lender and who understands their structure. And what I mean by understanding their structure is basically, will they accept this income on this year or the item on the P&L as depreciation? Will they accept directors' wages? Will they accept that in combination with net profit? So trying to get all those all together increases your borrowing capacity, and that increases the outcome that you may be looking for if you're looking to buy more tangible assets like investment properties, or you're trying to buy a nice stable home for your family.
I think just back on the topic, it was like, for me, the mortgage broker that I've been with has been with me since day one,
Yeah.
right? And it's really important that they're very patient and they are very professional in the sense that they know what the black and white is, but
Yeah.
they're also very agile
Yeah.
and tell me when to pivot. Because
Okay.
my particular circumstance, not representative of all lawyers, is that I was first working for a firm and then I went to open a firm by myself.
Yeah.
So the transition and I guess the investments that I make, be it property or shares or otherwise, is very important for me to be able to have someone take account of the entire portfolio.
How was your experience with pricing? Like as a lawyer, did you find that you get favorable pricing from different lenders?
Well, again, I think with lawyers, we tend to be lower risk because we're very conservative and
Yeah.
we don't want to sort of be in breach of the law and then lose our practicing certificates. To us, that's the number one thing. We don't want to be in the news or be, in court for fraud or anything.
Yeah.
I think the pricing wise, we've always been given what was the best. But for us, interestingly, we would rather have structures that
Yeah,
are
of course.
agile and pay a bit more of a premium.
Sometimes it's not always about the price, it's about the structure as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, for me, I like to focus on a particular industries. One of them, lawyers, and so that's the same as another industry that I like to focus on. What's healthcare as well is it does take a mortgage broker, and I like to think that myself that I'm quite a patient person, and
You
I
are.
am quite agile and of the way I approach things, and essentially I basically try and look for every single avenue to get the best outcome. Pricing sometimes is a very important factor to a lot of people as well. They always want to get the best deal, and I certainly keep pushing that until I have bankers basically screaming at me, telling me no. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get the best outcome for the client. But sometimes it is just about understanding how the bank is actually looking at this. The banks, they look at incomes very differently. They also will accept exemptions based on different outcomes as well, or the way that they're looking at income as well. For example, I recently had a client that essentially had a whole lot of changes of income over a certain period, a couple of years or so. He basically had his income increase significantly over the course of 2 years, although it had changed from PAYG to basically private billings. So he basically went from 50% billings to 90% billings. And so basically his income essentially tripled overnight. But on his tax return, he only had the history of working in the public sector for a public hospital.
So what was he trying to achieve with that additional income?
So he was essentially trying to upgrade his primary residence. Yeah, so he was trying to upgrade that. He already had built a substantial property portfolio, so he necessarily wasn't looking to grow that. However, to get to the size of that portfolio, he's used a lot of his borrowing capacity, and so he really needed to prove the income that he was actually earning on paper, or find a bank that would actually understand how his income is structured and where the true income lie. What it really comes down to is finding the right lender that will actually fit the policy. The example that I'm using is with a healthcare client, but it also is the same for a lawyer as well.
Yeah.
So basically, there are a lot of banks that they won't even entertain the conversation. They don't understand the income, so you don't go to them. You go to the ones that specialize in that particular industry. In this case, there's a number of major banks out there that have certain policies they make for doctors or lawyers. And so in this situation, we actually went to a few lenders. One lender, we actually got an exemption just basically based on the FY25 tax returns,
Oh,
just
right.
from the doctor. For example, he had a whole bunch of income that he had earned from a PAYG role working for the hospital.
Mm.
However, that had ceased actually in the current financial year. So in a normal policy setting, you wouldn't be able to use that income. But we were able to litigate that. We were able to put the case to the assessor and essentially get an exemption through for them to just look at the income that was on the tax return.
Very good.
Because at the end of the day, the banks just want to understand the income. They just need to know the story behind it. And so there was enough income alone just on that tax return to get the outcome that the client was looking for and increase his borrowing capacity to upgrade his PPOR.
Yeah, fantastic. And definitely less risk now that his income has, tripled.
Yeah, that's right as well. I mean, so that was just one lender the way they
One
looked at
lender.
it.
Yeah.
There was another lender that looked at it completely different.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
the way that they actually looked at it is they looked at projections of the financials of the current year.
Right.
So we were able to essentially get financials up to, say, March, and then we were actually able to analyze the financials and we were actually able to service on that figure.
Very good.
So those types of things in normal policies are not allowed, but lenders that understand lawyers' income and doctors' incomes, that's how they can assess it and they can have an open view of the way that they look at that income.
Oh, fantastic.